Hey guys. So today, keeping with tradition and sticking with legacy operating systems, I figured let's see what Windows 7 would offer us. Knowing that Windows 7 is officially end of life, there are ports of Windows 7 that are still semi-supported, at least this year, which are the embedded systems or the point-of-sale systems. Much like the Windows XP days, which really pushed on from an additional 5 years after the operating system was end of life for support. Windows 7 still has these ports, these embedded systems, as well as the point-of-sale systems. The question is how do we get updates for these systems without paying for them? Now, there are third-party tools you could use or workarounds where you can install certain patches manually, and then you can manually patch through the catalog. Those are options. But the question is what if we use WSUS? Can we still push Windows updates to a Windows 7 machine with a WSUS server and not have to deal with this, in essence creating our own automatic updates from our internal infrastructure? I figured today we'll tackle this question and figure out whether or not this is possible. Stick around, guys. Hey guys, so now that we have our Windows 7 machine configured, it's on the network we need it to be on. We have our domain controller from our YouTube domain created an additional server here, called it YTD WSUS. This particular server is going to be our Windows Server update service. So I'm going to walk you through how to do the install. And it's pretty straightforward. The first thing we got to do, though, is we need to make sure that we have a storage location to actually store the updates. This generally should be probably 2 to 4 terabytes in size if you're going to use it for a production-based server. However, if you're going to use it just for the sake of testing, and honestly, you can make it whatever you need it to be. I'm going to start with 60 gigs. It's possible I'm going to have to make it 200, 300, even 500, and maybe even a terabyte. I don't know yet. But for the sake of this, I'm just going to start small. What you'll need to do is you'll need to, once you have the drive created, go into the drive, create a folder. I called mine Windows Update Directory. Go to Properties, go to Sharing, go to Advanced Sharing, go to Permissions, and add authenticated users and domain computers with read-only access. Then once you have that set, you're going to go into Security, you're going to go into Advanced, and add authenticated users and domain computers with read and execute access. Once you have that created, the next step to this is pretty simple. We'll just go into the Server Manager. And wait till the little blue bar at the top here finishes doing what it's doing for the discovery process. Then we're going to click on the Add Roles and Features once this finishes. Okay. We're going to click on Next. This is our server. That's our IP. We'll click on Next. Scroll at the bottom here. You're going to see Windows Server Update Service. You're going to click the checkbox. It's going to bark and tell you there's a bunch of additional features that need to be installed. You're going to click on Add Features. Then you're going to click on Next, and then Next, and then Next, and Next again, and Next again. And at this point, you're going to get the option to either use a SQL Server or WID connectivity. Now, keep in mind that the SQL Server is probably the better choice here, just because if you need to manage this and migrate it at any point where you don't want to do a rebuild, which honestly, in a WSUS server, I would always suggest the rebuild versus the migration, just because the migration is never what it appears to be. It's always sloppy and it never really works right. I've been doing these migrations on these servers since probably Windows 2000. So over the past 24 years, I've had it maybe go successful 2 or 3 times. All the other times, there's either corruption in the database or something gets hosed, and you'll end up having to rebuild it anyway. So there's really no reason to use the SQL Server unless you have a SQL Server license and you want everything stationary on one server. Then that's totally acceptable. If not, just use the WID connectivity, and you'll click Next. At this point, what it's going to do is it's going to ask you to create a folder, which we already created, and you're going to ask you for the path to the actual folder. You could use either the remote path or the local path. So the remote path is the share. And if you don't know what that is, you just go down into the Start menu, type in CMD to get your command prompts there. I would suggest you pin it to Start if it's not already there. Launch it, type in net share, and you'll see our Windows Update Directory and that's the path to where it is. So we could either use the E drive with the path, or we could use the server name / this here. So if we want to know what the host name is, just type in host name. So we got YTD WSUS. So we would do whack YTD WSUS / and then we would need the path, so we could just go over here and we could grab this, right click up here, paste it in, and there's our directory. So we could click next and then restart the server, yes, click on install, and once this finishes we'll pick up the video. Okay guys, so we're back. The installation finished, we rebooted our server. If you weren't prompted to reboot your server, make sure you reboot your server before you continue on. So since you've rebooted, let's take a look at the configuration portion of this now. So we have the services installed, we have our database installed. We're going to click up here where we have the little flag and the little alarm triangle. We're going to click on the launch post installation task. Okay, so if you guys ran this and you see this error message, this is what I'm talking about really buggy WSUS configurations. So if you see that, don't worry about it. What we'll have to do now is we'll just have to manually run this thing. So if you go to Start and then Windows Administrative Tools, and then you'll scroll down to the bottom here, you'll see Windows Server Update Service. Just click on that. What that's going to do is it's going to open up the console. We're going to have to do some configuration to get this to work correctly. So let's go to here, WSUS configuration. You're going to get a pop-up. The pop-up is going to say we need to create a locally configured installation. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to browse, go to the drive, go to that, click OK, click Run. And what this will do is this will configure the back end of the actual WSUS system to use the local system, whereas the front end will still continue to use the WSUS path that we created earlier. This is a bug that's existed since, honestly, probably Windows 2000 that they still haven't fixed. But then if you've seen Windows 11, I don't have much hope for them ever fixing this. So once this finishes, we'll get into the console and we'll start to do the configuration. And then we'll jump over into GroupPolicy. We'll do that configuration and we'll get the desktop up and running. We can see if we can then patch the Windows 7 machine. Okay, so that finished running. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the config. So you should get this box here that pops up that tells you that we're ready to do the installation of the configuration wizard. We're going to click on Next. I don't want to join the Microsoft Improvement Program for this. Click Next. Synchronize with Microsoft Windows updates. Okay. Obviously, if you're using some kind of a proxy, you'll configure it here. If you followed our sinkhole DNS configuration and you're using that, you'll have to create the proxy configuration to circumvent the sinkhole, or you'll have to add a trust in the sinkhole DNS configuration to allow the server to communicate outbound. Synchronize with Microsoft Windows Update. We don't need to use a proxy server for this, but if you did, you'd click on Use the Proxy Server. Specify proxy server, don't need to. We'll just hit Start Connecting. Okay guys, so that probably took a while for you. Usually it takes anywhere between, I don't know, 5-10 minutes and 2-3 hours, depending on the speed of your infrastructure, how much data it has to download, and the speed of your hardware. So once it's finished downloading the products and synchronizing with the Windows Update site, what we're going to do now is we're going to click on Next. And it's going to ask us specifically what languages we want to download. I just speak English poorly, obviously. You can tell from the videos. So I'm just going to hit the download the updates in only these languages. It's going to bark and tell you that it's going to cause issues. The truth of the matter is it'll only cause issues if you're in an infrastructure that has more than just the English language. So once I select that, I'm choose Next. Now it's going to give me a product list. This is where we would tell it specifically what products we want to actually update, whether it's Windows 10, Windows 11, or certain features or functions. Now keep in mind, this is the reason why this thing took forever to download, is because there is an enormous amount of information in here. And you'll see as we scroll down that we could still patch Windows Vista and Windows XP in WSUS configuration. Even though an XP machine technically can't see the domain controller because of the SMB configuration, if we had a 2008 domain controller with SMB1 turned on, and then we also had a 2016 or 2019 domain controller in the same mix on the configuration, and we still had SMB1 turned on that other DC, we could create the wait. We could have the Windows XP machine still patch through the WSUS server. So keep in mind, like if you're looking for a way to patch these systems with older updates and you don't want to go through the catalog process, this is the way you do it. But for the sake of this, what we're going to do is we're going to actually just we're going to uncheck everything with the exception of Windows 7 and probably Windows XP, because we'll test that out. We'll give that a shot and see how that works on the infrastructure. Okay, so we selected what we wanted to select. Now, if you guys don't know, specifically all you have to do is click the All Products and then unclick the All Products, and it'll deselect the most current operating system and configuration that exists. And then when you go through the process here, you just check what you want to check. So for instance, we checked Windows XP. You know what? I'm going to check Windows Vista too, because probably create a video on Windows Vista at some point too. It'd be nice to be able to patch that thing. Then we're going to scroll up. We're going to choose Windows 7 Embedded, because I'm assuming that thing's still part of that process that still gets patched for the point of sale systems. So I'm guessing that we'll have to make some kind of registry change on the Windows 7 machine to make it think it's a point of sale or an embedded system. And then this should be able to patch it. And then the last thing we did is we chose Windows 7. And once you do that, you'll click on Next. And now you're going to choose the classifications you want to download. For instance, do you want to just do critical updates or definitions, driver sets, feature packs, security updates, upgrades, update tools, roll-ups. So if you do upgrades, technically speaking, you should be able to roll Windows 7 up to Windows 10 still for free as an upgrade process through the WSUS server. It worked in the past, and I'm assuming it'll probably still work. I haven't tested that. We can test that on that Windows 7 machine to see if we can do an in-place upgrade to Windows 10. So I mean, I could just choose Windows 10, but you don't have to do this all right now. You could only choose the bare minimum or what you want to actually choose. So I'm just going to do critical updates and security updates. And then I'm going to choose Next. And then it's going to ask me when I want to synchronize these updates. Right now I'm going to choose manually, because I don't know how big this package is yet, and I'm assuming it's probably bigger than the 60 gigs I've allocated, but we'll figure that out at the next point or some point in this process. And then we're going to click Next. And then it's going to ask us if we want to do the initial synchronization. You could choose yes or no to check this or not check this. Just keep in mind, if you do it, it's probably going to take 30 minutes, 45 minutes for this thing to download this stuff. So if you've got something else to do in the meantime, click it. If you don't, then you can still do it manually from in the console. And you could kick it off at 6 o'clock at night, so it could run all night. So you don't have to worry about it, chewing up bandwidth, downloading all these updates all day long. So we'll click Next. And then that's it. Now it'll tell us that we could add additional SSL to the WSUS box if we want to do secure socket layer for the connection. But for the sake of the testing right now, it's not necessary. If this is going to be a compliant infrastructure, then obviously it's necessary. But this right now is just a test. So at that point, what we'll do is we'll just click on Finish, and then we'll restart the server, and we'll get into the configuration on the WSUS box. Okay, guys, so we rebooted the box. Server's back up. And as you can see up here, we no longer have any task details, so that error is gone. And again, that's because we configured it through the actual console, through the wizard, and not through the server manager. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to server manager properties. I'm going to do not start the manager automatically at startup, because at this point we have the configuration done, and I don't want to be annoyed by that stupid thing every single time I log into Windows. So what we'll do now is we'll click on Start, Administrative Tools, and then we'll launch the Windows Server Update Service by clicking on the Windows Server Update Service link. I would suggest before you do that to right-click on it, choose to pin to start, click out, and click start, and then you'll see it listed there. So if this server's only got those two roles, or that role as a WSUS box, and realistically, keep in mind for compliance, everything is a one-to-one. So you're allowed to have a file server and a print server together, because technically they're both shares. But you're not allowed to have WSUS server on your file server, on your print server. Everything requires its own license. That's part of the compliance process. But at any rate, for the sake of this, to get in, once again, we just click on the Windows Server Update Service icon. So once we get in here, we're going to see an error message at the top that's going to say we need to synchronize the server for critical and security updates, yada, yada, yada. We haven't done that yet. We know that already. We saw that in the last video. If we check the box, so the YTD WSUS box, underneath that we're going to see updates. See all updates. Since we haven't synchronized yet, we're not going to show them here yet. We're going to get a list of the computers. Since we don't have GroupPolicy configured yet, we're not going to see the computers listed here yet. Downstream servers, it's going to be the servers that are replicated. So we could have one WSUS console replicate to multiple WSUS consoles. So if you have an enormous network, you could set up multiple places for systems to download from. Especially if you have multiple sites, it'll make it a lot less network consuming if you have servers at each site. Just keep in mind you're going to need the storage, and depending on how many applications, servers, desktops, operating systems, and variables you have, depends on how enormous this can actually get. Now we have synchronization, so we'll see the first synchronization here. I canceled because we had the error. The second synchronization went through and completed. We don't see any updates because we didn't check any of those boxes to download the updates, which is why we have to synchronize again. Then under here we have reports. So if you install report services, you can actually run reports to show what Windows updates have applied to systems, what hasn't been updated, and what has failed updates. So you can get a pretty clear view as to what you have going on from a security perspective on your WSUS box. And then we have options. And this is where you would choose your products and your computers and your roll-ups and all of the customization you want to make in your WSUS server. So I think the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up the synchronization and kick off the synchronization so we can get some updates in here and we can start to configure the WSUS box. And while that's doing that, I'll flip us over to the domain controller so we can start configuring our Windows Update configuration from the domain controller. Okay, so before we start our synchronization, let's go into our options here and let's choose our automatic approvals. So in here is where we could set up a default or we could create additional rules. In addition, we could choose to update the WSUS product itself, which is the server that we're on. In here, we could choose specifically unassigned computers. So how this works ultimately is if we go into computers and we right click and we do add computer group and we call this, say, Windows 7. And then we go into all computers and we add computer group and we call it Windows XP. And we'll add another one for Windows Vista. Okay, so we have different computer groups. And if we go back down into options and we go to automatic approvals, we could do when an update is in critical updates or secure updates, approve the update for, and we could say Windows 7 and click OK. And what that'll do is that will then automatically approve our critical updates and our security updates for Windows 7, so you don't have to manually do this. That said, if you wanted to create, say, a new rule, you could do a new rule and choose specifically Windows 7 and then call it something custom. So like Windows 7 update approval for critical, Windows XP automatic update for critical, or whatever the next things are. And then you could also create additional groups in here if you want to do like upgrades, where you want to roll up like a Windows 10 to a Windows 11 machine or a Windows 7 to a Windows 10 machine. You could choose that and then create the automatic approvals and add the machines manually into that group. And as they get updated by GroupPolicy, they'll automatically download the upgrades to the later operating systems and then patch the systems automatically. So that's the way this works from here. But again, for the sake of this, we just want to run updates. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to updates. Actually, we're going to go to synchronization, right click on it, choose synchronize now. And now the system will run the synchronization. All right, so while this is doing this, let's jump over back into the domain controller and let's configure our Windows Update policy. Okay guys, so welcome back. Now we're on the domain controller. So the first thing we're going to do is create a new OU inside of your OU structure for your legacy machines. And what I did is I created a staging location specifically for Windows 7, Vista, and XP. Once you add your computer to the domain, the default group, unless you've changed this, will automatically go to computers. So we know that this is my Windows 7 machine. So I'm going to grab this, drag it, and drop it into the Windows 7 folder. It's going to bark. Just say yes. And now the machine is here. If you really wanted to, you could jump in there and you could enter a description, call it like Windows 7 or whatever you want. This, again, testing, there's not much on this domain, so it's easy to keep track. So, and not only that, but it says Windows 7. So once you have that done, the next thing you're going to do is we're going to open up GroupPolicy. And again, if we've tagged it already and added it, it's right over here on the side. If not, it's under Administrative Tools. And then it's just listed as GroupPolicy Management. Once we have that open, you're just going to right-click on GroupPolicy Objects and choose New, and create yourself a new WSUS policy for your Windows 7 machine. So I called this one Windows 7 WSUS. Right-click on it, go to GPO Status, and disable the user configuration, and then choose Edit. Okay, so once you have chosen Edit, what you're going to do next is you're going to choose Computer Configuration, Policies, Administrative Templates, Windows Components, and then if you scroll all the way towards the bottom, I think it's the second from the last, if not the last, it's just called Windows Update. You select that, hit the caret to hit the drop down, and on the right hand side you're going to see a listing of all your update controls. And we'll go through these things one by one so we get these things configured. Okay, so the first one we got here is do not display install updates and shutdown option in the shutdown Windows dialog box. And specifically what this one means is when you hit the start shutdown area where you get the prompt to allow you to install the updates and shut down, if you want to allow people to see that or don't allow people to see it, this is where you would set that. So do not display. We don't care, so just disable, next. Do not adjust default options to install updates and shutdown in the shutdown Windows dialog box. This option, basically, if you set this as enabled, which we're going to do, it means that the end user doesn't have the option to change their update settings. Enable Windows Update Power Management to automatically wake up the system to install scheduled updates. We're going to set enabled because if the system goes to sleep, we want the system to wake up to automatically install the updates. Turn off automatic restart for updates during active hours. We're going to hit enabled, and we're going to say between the hours of 7 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the afternoon, the system will not automatically restart itself or during the day. So if somebody brings a machine home, or if the machine goes to sleep or whatever else, based off of our other configurations, the system will automatically install the updates and reboot. Specify active hours range. We'll hit enabled. We're going to change this to 14 hours. Click next. Allow updates to be downloaded automatically over metered connections. We're going to hit enabled. Now, if you have everybody is on like a hotspot and you pay for the data, then you might want to hit disabled. But for the sake of this, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to hit enabled. Always automatically restart on the scheduled time. Yes. Specify deadline before auto restart for update installations. Say 7 days. Give them a week. Configure automatic restart reminder notifications. Yep, so every 15 minutes they get a pop-up that annoys the bejesus out of them, telling them to reboot the machine. Turn off auto restart notifications for update installations. Now, if you do this, this means that they don't get the prompt from the previous notification, which means they would never know that it's coming, and you don't want to do that, so just disable that one. Configure auto restart required notifications for updates. Yes. We do auto because if nobody's there and you want it to reboot itself at 2 o'clock in the morning and it's requiring somebody to hit the prompt, it won't reboot until they hit the prompt to allow it. That's helpful if you work in a company that does a lot of development where people don't save things and have a lot of things open on their machine. Otherwise, just leave it as auto. Click next. Configure automatic updates. We'll hit enable. We'll sell it to auto download and schedule for the install. And the reason why you do that is because you're scheduling it through the console. If you choose any of the other options in here, like auto download and notify for install, or auto download, or notify for download and auto install, none of these will work, so they won't actually install the update. So just leave that as that. Install during automatic update maintenance. So if you want to do additional software, you can. We're going to do every week. We're going to do every day, and we're going to do updates at 8 o'clock at night. And then we're going to install updates for other Microsoft products. So if you have like Microsoft Office and things like that, you want to hit that checkbox. You hit next and specify deadlines for automatic updates and restarts. So 7 days, they keep hitting that. Don't reboot, don't reboot, don't reboot. But on the 7th day, tough, and it will reboot their machine. You could add a grace period of 2 days, and then you could choose to don't auto update until the end of the grace period. I'm not going to do that. Specify the intranet Microsoft Update Service location. I'm going to choose enabled, and this is where we're going to enter the information from our WSUS server. Okay, so now that we got to the point where we're going to configure our intranet configuration, we got to dip back over to our from our domain controller to our WSUS server so we could get the port information. So how we do this is understanding that system is the listener. So if you do a task list, or if you open up your task manager and you locate system, you'll see the PID as number 4. That's going to be listed under details in your task manager. And then what we're going to do is we're going to actually do a netstat-aon find listening, and then specifically look for the PID number of 4. And on the right hand side here, we're going to see these are the addresses here on the right hand side that are the locals. So 0.0.0 is the local address that's listening. So it's listening on all IP addresses on these specific ports. These two IPs, or ports rather, 8530 and 8531, is really HTTP and HTTPS on the listener on the actual WSUS box. So this is listening on HTTP, and this is listening on HTTPS. Now keep in mind, you can't use the HTTPS unless you have an SSL cert. So if you don't have an SSL cert, the only thing you need to know is 8530. If you're not using the default port, this is important to know, and this is how you figure that out. If you are using the default port, then it should always be 8530 and 8531. Okay, so now that we looked at the configuration we had over on our WSUS box, back in GroupPolicy here, what we would do is we could configure http:// the server name :8530. Again, 8531 if you have an SSL cert. If not, it's 8530, and use the HTTP configuration. We don't have an alternative server, so that would be something that we would proxy. Like, for instance, if we had multiple sites, you would add those servers into here. But for the sake of this, that's fine. We don't need to enforce TLS certificate. Ultimately, I wouldn't check anything else. I would just leave this as it is. And then we could circle back if we need to make changes for security purposes. But I would suggest using TLS even if you're not going to use the HTTPS configuration. So we'll click on Next. The automatic update detection frequency. So how often do you want Windows Desktop to check this server for updates that are available? Generally 22, 24 hours. I would just leave it like that. Do not allow update deferral policies to scan against Windows updates. You want to enable that. So basically you want to tell Windows desktops not to scan other Windows desktops to see if there's updates available for them, because it causes a lot of traffic for no reason. So we'll enable that. Remove access to pause updates. We'll enable that. Remove access to all Windows Update features. I'm going to disable that. So you don't want to lock them out. So if somebody wants to go in there and run their own Windows updates and update their machine, then you want to set that as disabled. Now, if you want to enable this, what that'll do is that'll means that any updates have to be approved by you as the admin before they can actually be applied to the system, which is good. But keep in mind that if you do that and it's a remote employee, they won't be able to remotely access this. And if you connect the VPN, it'll probably take a really long time to download the actual portfolio catalog to the actual machine to apply the updates. So unless you have this public facing, I would probably just set this as disabled. Your call. Click Next. Do not connect to any Windows Update internet locations. So if you hit enable on this, then that means they have to download it from their WSUS server. If you hit disable, they could still update from the actual public side. Now, keep in mind that if you enable or disable this, it doesn't change the approval rating. So if you enable this and say do not connect to any internet locations, then they can't connect to any internet locations and download updates. If you disable this, then it means that they I'm sorry, if you enable this, it means they can't connect to any external outside locations. If you disable this, they can connect to external locations. But you could still configure this in the WSUS group policy configuration, at least on Windows 10 and 11, to force your Windows machines to automatically run the updates that you approve from the update locations of the internet or intranet. It doesn't necessarily mean that it can update to everything, because you can still set approval listings. So we'll click on Next. Allow non-administrators to receive update notifications. You should always do that if your users are users and not admins. You want them to know that there's updates available and pending. Click Next. Specify engaged restart transition and notification for scheduled updates. You click on Yes. This is basically just if you got feature upgrades or quality updates you want to do, with the deadlines on, the amount of days that they could snooze it for. Generally speaking, I usually use just 1 day, so that way in the event that they click on to snooze, it'll still force the system to install the update at least within a week's time. And click on Next. Do not include drivers in Windows updates. I cannot argue this enough. Do not update Windows machines with drivers. It causes chaos, because Microsoft will always overwrite the manufacturer's driver with the Microsoft generic driver, and that causes more issues than it's worth. If you need to patch things, go out and find yourself a third-party tool to patch the actual drivers, but don't use Windows to do it. You're asking for problems, especially if you use like manufacturers like Lenovo and HP, where they don't actually manufacture their own drivers and they rely on Windows to do it. You might as well just take the machine and light it on fire. It would probably be more reliable. Turn on software notifications. We could disable that. Allow automatic updates immediately to install. So if you hit disable on this and you use, say, like Defender in your Office 365, it'll block Office 365 from getting Defender updates for your spam policies. So you want to click on Enable on this, regardless of whether or not you think that's a good idea. And in a lot of ways, it's really not a good idea. But if you use Defender, you really have no choice. Turn on recommended updates via automatic updates. You want to click on Enable if you have recommended updates as a download into your WSUS configuration. If not, you could click on Disabled. No automatic restart with logged on users for scheduled. You want to set this disabled. So that means, like, if they lock the machine and they walk away, they're technically still logged on, and the machine will not reboot itself at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning if that's when you have your schedule set to restart the system. So don't do that. Just make sure you disable that. Click on Next. Reprompt for restart for scheduled installations. So you probably want to do this, and you want to likely set this for like 50 minutes. And basically, so what'll happen is, if a machine was asleep without an internet connection, when it wakes up on your infrastructure, how long do you want to wait before the machine prompts the user to reboot? The longer you wait, the more time the system has to download the update on the actual desktop. So if you say like 10 minutes and there's like a package that's like 3 or 4 gigs, the user will have to wait while the system is applying the updates on the reboot. Whereas if you say 50 minutes and the machine has the time to download it, it only has the person will only have to wait for the amount of time that it takes to actually install the package. Click Next. Delay restart for scheduled installations enabled. Basically, what this will do is it'll delay how long it waits to restart itself. So if it has a bunch of stuff open that it has to close first, it won't just terminate those sessions. It'll wait that amount of time to close those applications before it reboots itself. So generally, I would put this as like 15 minutes. Click Next. Reschedule automatic updates, scheduled installations. Yes. How long after the system boots? So if there's like updates and then it reboots, and now there's another series of updates and it reboots and there's another series of updates, how long do you want it to wait before it starts to apply the updates? How long does it take for that system to fully load when the system turns on? So if you have a lot of old hardware, you're probably going to want to make this about 15 minutes. If you have a lot of state-of-the-art hardware, then you make it 5. Click Next. Configure automatic restart warning notifications for scheduled updates. Enabled. So here you go. It'll warn you before it reboots 15 minutes. It says the automatic restart reminder for 4 hours. Since we know that we're going to reboot at 9 o'clock, we're going to set it for 8 hours. So that way 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it'll tell somebody, hey, I'm going to reboot tonight. Make sure you have all your work saved. So click next. Update power policy for cart restarts. Yes. So in other words, if you have like a UPS or if you're on a cart where these are like managed machines, it'll actually take the systems out of hibernate, turn all the systems back on in order to patch the systems before it puts them back into hibernate. Click next. Client-side targeting disabled. If you got a machine that gets infected with something and you client-side target, basically what you're doing is you're passing the infection to your own machine. So you just spread things like a worm. So don't do that unless you have your configuration set where you could target the other machines and you have, something like Sentinel-1 or some other really strong antivirus, anti-ransomware software on your infrastructure. Otherwise, don't do that. Click next. Allow signed updates from the intranet Microsoft, so enable. Because if you don't enable this particular portion of the policy, what will happen is that Windows won't get the intranet updates. It won't allow you to update from the WSUS server and everything will fail. So click next. Display options for update notifications, enabled. So what I generally do is I disable all of them, excluding the restart warnings. So they'll still get the pop-up about the system having to restart in order to run the updates, but it won't give them 15 million pop-ups all day long about updates and different packages that need to update. Generally speaking, users don't know that anyway. Then once you're done, just click OK, and you've applied or configured all of your policy updates. Now, Windows Update for Business. Where this actually gets helpful is if you want to manage or set a target feature update version. So in other words, if we were running Windows 10 and we wanted all of our machines to only update to 22H2 and don't update past that part of 22H2, maybe there's a bug in the next version, we would just click OK. And then basically what will happen at this point is Microsoft Windows 10 will not update past 22H2. But keep in mind, because we have Windows 11, which kind of also has a 22H2, this doesn't work unless you split the policy. You would need to create a Windows 11 policy and a Windows 10 policy and then either use your WMI filters or apply these policies individual to the different operating systems. Otherwise, this won't work. It'll cause your Windows 11 machines to stick at 22H2 and your Windows 10 machines to upgrade to 22H2. So, and then if you go to 23H2 or whatever the newest version of Windows 11 is, it'll think that the Windows 10 machine should upgrade to 23H2 and it'll cause an issue. So don't mix and match policies. Generally speaking, you want a one-to-one policy configuration on anything that you're going to configure the Windows Update for Business configuration settings. So now let's go back over to our Windows 7 machine and get that configured so we can get updates. As I'm thinking about this, we should probably apply this policy before we go back over to our Windows 7 machine. So our Windows 7 WSUS policy is right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go up to staging. We're going to go into Windows 7. We're going to do link an existing policy. We're going to grab our Windows 7 WSUS and click OK. And that has now applied the policy to the Windows 7 location. Now keep in mind that that 7 location, because of the way these are designed, it doesn't exist in XP or Vista, and that's how you would separate the policy configuration. All right, let's jump over to the desktop now. Okay, so we're now back on our Windows 7 machine, and what we need to do is we need to apply our group policy configuration. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on Start. In the search, we're going to do CMD. We're going to right-click on this. We're going to run it as administrator. And then we're just going to simply do GP update space / force. What this is going to do is this is going to download the updated policy configuration we just set on our domain controller. Okay, so we have that applied now. So the next step, which is probably not necessary, but we're going to do it anyways, we're going to reboot the Windows 7 machine, and then we're going to jump back over to our WSUS configuration. Okay, so we're back on our Windows 2019 server, our WSUS server, and as you can see, the system is still running the actual sync, so it's probably been going on now for a good solid 10-15 minutes. We can also see that we have 4,240 security updates that are waiting to be approved, 266 critical updates that are waiting to be approved, 403 new products, and 11 new classifications that have been added in the last 30 days. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually expand this. We're going to first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to computers. And then we're going to go to all computers and we're going to unassign computers. We're going to change the drop down here to any for our status and hit refresh. And there we go. That's the PC that we added to the group policy that we just set up. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually move this thing. We're going to change the membership. So you'll right click, choose change membership, and choose Windows 7 and hit OK. So now if we go in here and we go to any and we do a refresh, there's our PC. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to updates and we're going to go to all updates. Now under approval, make sure it's any except decline, and under status, make sure it's any. And if we look in here, there we go. We have Windows XP, Windows 7, and we have Windows Vista updates available to patch our Windows 7 XP and Vista machines. So there you go, gentlemen. We could now download all of our Windows 7, Windows Vista, and Windows XP updates for our test machines without having to jump through the catalog and all those other issues. Now, since we have what appears to be updates from a variety of different times, we'll have to figure out if there's anything latest in here or anything updates to the point where we could actually use the system as a functional use system, or if we still have to go through the extended support configuration workaround that exists on the internet. So I think what we'll do first is we're going to have to go through our configuration here and figure out specifically maybe under critical, and do any except declined, and then any for status, and do refresh. And there we go. So now we have critical updates listed here. So we want to update, say, Windows 7. What we do is we right-click on this and we click Approve, and then we choose to approve for install under the Windows 7 and hit OK. And what that will do is the approval will force the system to download the update onto the WSUS server, and then force that update out to that Windows 7 machine that we added. And that's going to allow us to set an approval list for our Windows 7 machine for all the updates that we want to push to our Windows 7 machine. Now keep in mind, if the Windows 7 machine is missing software that would be required in order for the patch to run, it won't run the patch. But the patch will be available as soon as that machine actually gets the piece of software. So as you can see, based off of what we have here, this proves our theory that yes, you could still patch Windows 7, Windows XP, and Windows Vista, at least till the end of support date with WSUS. So you don't have to jump through the catalog. You don't have to download these fake service packs. You don't have to question whether or not you're doing things securely. You could do all of it through a WSUS package. And ultimately, you could do it with a trial key of Windows 2019, build your Windows 7 machine with all your updates on it, and then take a backup of that system so you have a fully intact Windows update backup of a Windows 7 machine. Now, once you're done with patching your systems, the next thing you're going to want to do is you'll go to your options here, and you could do the server cleanup wizard. And what that'll allow you to do is delete any old junk out of here that you no longer want to get. So if you decide that you want to update the products and classification, in other words, you want to change what you're downloading and say uncheck your Windows XP in there, as soon as you do that, if you go down to server cleanup wizard and then you run the cleanup wizard, it'll delete all the Windows XP patches out of the system. That way you don't have so much space being taken by your Windows updates. So it'll probably take me a little while to go through this. You can set the approval rating up for all of the approved updates that'll be patched to the Windows 7 machine. And hopefully I should be able to make another video maybe in a couple days that we could go through that and see if that leaves us off with only the updates up to the end of life of Windows 7, or if it patches Windows 7 under the extended support configuration out further. And if not, then what is our workaround with a registry hack on our Windows 7 machine to actually give us the ability to update that machine to the latest build number for the point of sale systems? Hopefully this video is cool and entertaining to you guys. Like and subscribe for more videos. Hopefully you stuck around. If not, totally get it. It's a long video. Might break it up into multiple parts eventually. But for the time being, here's a full configuration on how to patch Windows Vista, Windows XP, and Windows 7. Like and subscribe. Take it easy, guys. Thanks for hanging around.